you all coming from a long ways away. We got family, we got friends, we got old friends, and old family. Everybody's getting old. Brave the coronavirus. This is incredible. Thanks for coming. If you don't know me, I'm Bill Crawford, Karen's oldest son, and I'm here to welcome you and introduce Bob Sachs. He's going to be our first speaker, Vietnam veteran and co-conspirator in the U.S. Armed Forces, and then we'll have Major General John Williams, and then we'll have the military honors. So thanks for coming. Enjoy your afternoon. After the service, we're going to join. Everybody's going to gather at Mom's house, which is Niska Place. It's really easy to find. You go back down to Brush Street. You can take Brush or Dora south to Perkins. Perkins is a one-way going to the west. So it's down Brush Street to Perkins to the right. You'll run into a T in Highland. Find a place to park. Our house is right there.
You got that,
Just
Kathy?
south of Highland and Perkins. Any questions?
I'm driving.
Or try to follow us. Thanks for coming and have a beautiful day.
Anyway, glad you guys could make it. Brave, the strong, and the able. I'm Bob Sachs. I'm retired Air Force. I served in Vietnam flying helicopters about the same time as Rich. And at that time, things were a lot different. For those of you who were around, that was not a very popular war. When we came back, we were not welcomed with open arms. We had a short haircut at that time. The long-haired folks thought we were like or something. But service in Vietnam at that time was a little different than today. Communications were not as sophisticated. Navigation was not as precise. The cell phone you have in your pocket or purse has accuracy that we didn't even feel. So flying helicopters, we did it the old-fashioned way. We had a map. We followed the road. Stay on the right side of the road. Hit anything. That's the way it worked. I don't know all the details of Rich's service. And then the helicopters rescued and saved a number of people. My job was similar combat rescue. We worked with special operations where the really crazy people, we drop them off and they wander around for a few days, gathering intelligence, and if they got detected, they could come in and pull them out. So it's a job. Fly during the day, home, sleep, fly during the day. That was my life for a while there. And so thank God that I survived. And unlike Rich, I didn't get a Purple Heart. It's okay with me. But, being awarded the Silver Star, John can correct me if I'm wrong, is the highest honor short of the Congressional Medal of Honor, I believe. So his acts of courage at Vietnam was amazing. He said a lot of things that didn't want to see, that you folks did not see. But we made it through. Just a couple little vignettes. Nowadays, working with the folks that are in the Gulf, they can communicate with their families on Skype. So, mom or dad is deployed. They can talk to their kids about their homework. When we were in Vietnam, there was no internet, and communication was mail or this wonderful thing called Mars. They had ham operators basically that would over here connect to local phone numbers so you could speak to your family. but it was a HF connection, so you had to say over because to which your talk speak. So a little cumbersome, and the whole world could hear your conversation, so it wasn't fun. And your sort of privacy there. In fact, there was one tale of a wife who had found somebody else while her husband was in Vietnam, and she said, George, it's over. Over? But anyway, let's see. Oh, nowadays they have finer cuisine. We had sea rations. Cans every day, go fuel out of the helicopter. A Coke can, that was lunch. And
MREs are not much better.
no, they're lighter, but no, not better. And let's see. Oh, the other thing, you all know what the selective service is, the draft. In that time, when men turned 18, got a selective service. And so we pretty much had three options. Go in the military, go to college, or go to Canada. So I was going to college anyway, so that's 6 years of my life. And then I joined the Air Force. They trained me how to fly 141s, and I thought, cool. I flew in and out of Vietnam repeatedly, taking supplies in and taking casualties back. And then I found out, hey, free training in helicopters, and I'm going to work first thing. So, I'm back to C5s, trained KC-10 pilots, and that's the few. General John Williams was one of the KC-10 pilots that was trained. Now, there's John that up there.
I'm going to set this down. Usually I work with a podium and a teleprompter. So I'm gonna do what I can. First, I'd like to thank all of you for coming today. I know that Rich appreciates it. Karen, the family appreciates it. All of you, thank you so much. Memorials are always kind of difficult. First reason is somewhere on the guest list, uninvited in the back, the tall guy wearing a dark cape with a hood, wearing a sock. It's kind of intimidating standing back there, and it makes everybody uncomfortable. I don't think we have to worry about that too much today. The only thing I can think of that kind of helps in a situation like that is something I saw Rich do quite a bit. He'd do it with me when we would sit and have a serious conversation. Sit in a chair in the living room, arms up here on the armrest. He'd lean all the way back, like this, crane out his neck, and just let a big deep breath out, close his eyes. Then we'd start in on something. Usually it was what I was going to do with my future, or what I didn't do so good that day at work. But it's the only thing that seems to help in a situation like this. The second thing I think is can be difficult is that there's a desire to try to completely summarize one person in a service. And I don't know that I'm up to that task. I don't know if I'm qualified for that. It's very difficult to do. I think we're all very complex. We're all very complicated. But I think where I might be able to add utility today is to add some perspective on one aspect of his life. Rich was many things. He was a father. He was a husband. He was a winery owner, a rancher. He was a friend. Like all of us, complex and complicated. I know a little bit and can add some context on his military service, what I know about that. I can take you back. I know he had a tough start in life. He got a lot of great support from Gavin and his family that helped him a tremendous amount. And then he got into the Army. And I think you can say that most people I talked to, that he really found a home in the military. He found that there were things that he could do that were valuable, he was good at it, he was rewarded for it, he was providing service. If you take a look at that program, you have that picture on it, I think it's kind of indicative of that. You see a young man with that smile, and it glows out at you. He was picked as outstanding aviator. He was the helicopter pilot for a 2-star general in Europe, stationed in Germany, which he loved, of course, being in Germany. Great experience for him. All roads lead to Germany if you're in the Army, eventually. But for him, it would have been a real dream. You can see on his face how much he enjoyed it. That satisfaction that he got from his work. In that, he had that initial start flying out of Rucker, learning how to fly helicopters, and then going to Europe. From there, into Vietnam. And I can share some context. I would defer to Bob and other people that were there to exactly give the details on what happened there. But I spoke with General Bob Brandt, Major General, who would go on to become the commander of the Guard, the Army Guard here in California. He wrote this book I'll refer to here in a little bit, but we talked about it, and what happened was, now what we know about Vietnam for many of us is what we see in movies, reading books, things from pop culture. What this book of his brought to light when I spoke to him, he told me how they were really inventing a whole new style of warfare. They didn't have a textbook. It was a 33rd Transportation company. And when they went in, the idea was to use helicopters just to transport people and equipment to where it was going to be used. It was a transportation. It was pretty utility-minded. But of course, they developed this whole new concept of air mobile warfare, and they made it up as they went. And as they say in aviation, they wrote the textbook in blood because you'd make mistakes, people got hurt, and then you learn not to do it next time. And so that's what they were doing. One of the things I talked with General Brandt about, he wanted me to put some points in. He couldn't be here today. He wanted to, but he couldn't with some of his health concerns. But he wanted me to make some points, and I saluted sharply and told him I would. He said to make note of, every time they flew over there, those helicopters, they were flying within, say, 100 yards of where the enemy was waiting for them in the tree line. So if they were going to fly in here, to put in context, well, the trees would be a lot thicker, of course, here. But it'd be like landing in the grapes there 100 yards away, and people were waiting with rifles and machine guns and things for you. So Rich had 6 air medals, and they award an air medal for 25 combat flights, which is 25 flights where the enemy is. So we're going to be in contact with the enemy. So he had 150 such flights, and about 700 hours of time in a helicopter in combat. So I'm going to read you a couple things that kind of put it in perspective when we talk about what was it, what wasn't. Two things here. One of them's from his book. I'm going to shorten it up, but there's just one passage that kind of puts you there. Talks about Lieutenant Dick Olson that was flying the helicopter leading a combat assault. He and Chief Warrant Officer Rich Keehn were leading the flight of helicopters at 100 knots, 20 feet over the ground, coming in over the rice paddies. There was a loud explosion with a bullet smashed into the bottom of the helicopter, came up through the legs of the pilot, right next to the control stick, and shattered the light over Rich's head. So the pilot that was flying screamed, pilots don't scream. No. He exclaimed loudly and was shocked out of the controls with this explosion that came up right between his thighs and slammed into the ceiling and shattered the glass all over Rich. Well, they had a policy to make sure that the other pilots got his hands on the controls when they're low level. And that came from somebody else crashing because somebody didn't have that. So When he exclaimed loudly and let go of the controls, Rich was on the controls, flew the helicopter while he got his game back together again so he could fly. A spiral piece of aluminum, which was part of the seat that he was flying in, screwed into the pilot's thigh. And so Rich flew the airplane while he got that together, and they could land, get their people off, and get into the fight. I put that out there just to kind of paint a picture of what kind of thing he was involved in for 150 such flights, 700 hours while he was doing that job. And then the other piece I'd like to put out is we were talking about his Purple Heart, and I haven't found the citation for what exactly that involved. I know we might be able to get some detail on that, but I've seen other Purple Hearts, and I'm not sure it's going to go into a lot of detail. But obviously that's for injury or death sustained in a combat operation. The other impressive decoration that I wanted to share with you was this Silver Star that he had. Now, I've been doing this now for over 35 years. I've never known anybody that had a Silver Star other than Rich. There is the Medal of Honor that we all pretty much know about. There is one other one, Bob, in there, Cross, Air Force Cross or Distinguished Service Cross, and then a Silver Star. It's gallantry in combat action, and there aren't a lot of them around. But I'd like to just read you a little bit about it. And the actual citation says, for gallantry in action in connection with military operations in conflict with an armed hostile force. Rich distinguished himself by exceptionally valorous actions serving as scout platoon leader on a combat operation. Upon flushing the enemy from a building, Rich's wingman engaged. Those individuals jumped into a canal. The wingman broke from the engagement, receiving fire from 3 more positions. Without hesitation, Captain Keehn flew directly at the firing enemy. The enemy then broke and ran, making repeated passes with his minigun directed at that enlarged opening. He was able to continue his action until a white phosphorus grenade was employed, silencing that location. Receiving heavy automatic fire from remaining positions, he held his position and placed continuous fire on those positions. Having expended his ammunition, he refused to break off the target and chased the remaining enemy into the surrounding banana palms. Keeping in the highest traditions of the military service and reflecting great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army. So that kind of paints a picture of what kind of things he was involved in. And I think, kind of like Bob, you were talking about, and I think you'd agree with me, I think it's important too to think about the motivation involved at the time. Where I think it differs from movies, and some of the Hollywood accounts, when things like that are going on, it's not about politics, it's about survival, and most importantly, you don't want to let down the person next to you, because they're counting. So he had a choice to go to the sounds of the guns or away. And from that account, you can see what his choice was. And so, for me, that's what matters is I try to take myself back to those days of what it meant to him and what he was doing. And I know what it was because we talked about it. It's about not letting the person down next to you because you don't want anything bad to happen to them. And that's what he did. And that's what I would like to emphasize. That's how I remember that part of his service. The other part of it I would say on that is that talking to General Brandt, talking with Rich, some of the other guys, and I know Bob has information on this too, but a lot of the people from that time suffer health ailments later, after it's all over. So there's the immediate damage to troops, and then there's the damage that comes later. And I think Rich, it's indicative of what happened with him, that there was some incurred cost to his health and his life that came years later. And that's part of the service. It's quiet. There's no citation. There aren't a lot of famous movies made about it, but it's part of the contract, and it's an open-ended contract. On that, what I would say, particularly, well, for all of us together, for Rich's family, and for Karen, I want you to think about the fact that I know it was really hard for him at the end, hard for you, for all of you. But I talked to Rich about a lot of things from high school on. When I knew I was going in the military, we talked about a lot of things. I know that for the suffering that he had at the end, I don't want you to dwell on it, because I know he would do it all again for 5 more minutes. And you know it. So I wouldn't dwell on that. I'd try to stay on all the good times that we all had together. And I think it's beautiful that we can all be here together to remember Rich and to support his family. One other thing I'll throw in there is that one of the other things I talked to him about, I wanted to learn going in the military, how do you deal with the fear? And we talked about that. And he told me something that I thought was pretty important. I didn't know much about, I didn't really get it at the time, but I think I know better now. What he told me was that you're gonna be afraid, but you don't have to stay there. He said, you got training, you rely on each other, and you get through. And I think it was a great lesson then. I think it's a great lesson now for all of us. We don't ever have to be afraid. It's gonna happen, but we can get out of it, and we will. The part I wish I could do right now is, I wish I could play the banjo, because he would love that, if I could pick my way out of this. But I'm afraid I can't do that. So hopefully we can all get together at the house, and maybe we'll find some banjo. Oh, well, there you go. I guess that's my segue. Well, again, thanks for being here, and see if you can pull on Bob's elbow and learn a little more about it, because he certainly knows, and there's probably other people here that know from that time that I am not aware of. But thanks for being here. Thanks for letting me be a part of it.
So I know Richard Keehn from a very different time and perspective as one of his grandchildren. To me, he was the chef, the master of garbage soup, as he called it, where he could take any combination of ingredients in the kitchen and make something magical out of it. The person who would set crepe Suzette on fire in front of the family, and we'd all compete to see who got the most to demonstrate they're the favorite, son, daughter, or grandchild. And to me, I also remember him as Dumbledore. When he dressed up after the 4th Harry Potter book came out as Dumbledore and read to us by the fire at Christmas. So that's the kind of grandpa that I grew up with, who motivated me to learn and strive and be better. He did push-ups and sit-ups with me in the morning when I was a kid, and taught me the value of a morning routine. Someone who was a warrior but also had a kind and gentle side that I like to appreciate. I was called here today to read a poem about how much he loved flying. So I would like everyone to join me in this and maybe close your eyes and just imagine yourself flying with me as we go through this. For him, it represented a release from suffering and a way to get away from everything and just enjoy the sky. That's kind of the spirit that I want to read this. It's called High Flight by John Gillespie McGee Jr. Oh, I have slipped the surely bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds and done 100 things you have not dreamed of. Wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence, hovering there. I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air, up along the delirious burning blue. I've topped the windswept heights with easy grace where never lark or even eagle flew. And while with silent lifting mind I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow soldier and I are here today to render final military honors to a fallen comrade. Honors will consist of the playing of taps, the unfolding, refolding, and presentation of the flag. During the playing of taps, I'll ask all who are able to please stand and place your right hand over your heart. All former and current military members may render the proper hand salute. At the conclusion of taps, you may be seated for the folding and presentation of the flag. At this time, please stand